A foldable Wi-Fi altitude hold drone for $40? Banggood, are you serious? This is going to be very interesting. Hi, I'm Ash from DroningON. Now, we don't all have $300 to spend on a portable drone. It might be your first drone, or you're buying it for somebody younger and you want something cheap and simple. That's where the new Eachine Elfie E50 might be of interest. Banggood have very kindly sent us this for a review, and it costs less than $40. Links to the products are in the video description. Enjoy the review, and if you have any questions, please comment below, and of course click subscribe. So this will be a very interesting one. Let's unbox it. And essentially, this is a bit of a copy of the Dobby, which was a little follow me selfie quadcopter released earlier this year. I mean, it looks very much like Dobby. Clearly that's been the inspiration here. In the box, we've got the actual quadcopter itself. We've got a little carry pocket thing for it, tiny little instruction manual, some props which are there, and they are spare props, so we've got 4 spare props in total because it comes fitted with props, and then a tiny little USB cable, and yeah, that's for charging the battery. So you plug this little dongle into your laptop or similar, and then plug the other end into the battery. Okay, so on top we've got a power button, which is, it looks like it might be illuminated as well. We'll have a look at that when we pull the power in. Looking at it, we've got a camera on the front which has a tiltable lens on there. That's a nice little feature. It's not going to be a motor controlled tilt, it's a manual tilt, so you set that before you take off. Got 2 lights on the front as well. On the rear we've got lights as well, and then looking at the underside, obviously we've got the folding arms, clearly directly inspired by Dobby. Okay, so that's it fully folded. They don't particularly lock into place, but they're rigid enough not to move during flight. Remember, this thing's not a performance quadcopter, so these motors are really not going to be stressing this airframe too much. So looking at the underside, we've got the battery door here, so slide that panel forward, and then that hinges out, and there is our battery. And here we have a 1 cell 500 milliamp. That's a tiny, tiny little battery. There are lots of batteries of this kind of size and scale, so you'll probably find some alternatives to fit into here if you require it. The power port for connecting the battery is just inside here as well. It's just in there. So we're going to connect that in now. It's a little bit fiddly. Okay, that is now in. Put the battery in there, and then we'll close that lid like that. So power is now on. We'll turn it on by pressing that button, and we've got flashing lights on the front and the rear. Okay, so they're all flashing now. What it's probably waiting for is us to connect our phone to it. So what we'll do now is download the app. Okay, so I've just looked on the Play Store, and we have an app here called Wi-Fi UFO. The manual says that that is the app you use to control this little quadcopter with, so we'll install that. Now, this quadcopter has been rebranded a few times. I believe that there's a JJRC version which looks almost identical. I'd imagine they all use the same or a similar app. Certainly the construction of it and the design of it is very similar. So we'll open that up now. This is a Wi-Fi quadcopter, remember, so it all connects via Wi-Fi on the phone. Okay, so with the power turned on and the lights on the front flashing, I'm going to turn on Wi-Fi first. And we'll see, there we go, Eachine. So I'm going to connect to that and wait for us to get connected. And there we go, we're now connected. Now the lights don't stop flashing on the front, it seems, until you actually control it. So I'm now going to start up the UFO app. Okay, and press play. And we're now in the interface. So I've got a live stream. It's not beautiful quality, but I must say there is virtually, I mean, there's like milliseconds of latency there. I'd say probably 200 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds, but certainly much less latency than on a lot of the other selfie quadcopters that have been on the market recently. For example, a Nagafly, a micro drone, they have quite a bit of latency when you move them around, but this is really quite rapid. So impressive when you consider that this thing costs around £30, which is $40. So in the app here, we've got lots of buttons for taking photo, for taking video. reversing the controls, speed sensitivity, etc. We've got altitude hold as well. Incredible that this thing has a barometer built in. So let's take off. So to take off, we press the off button here, which shows us our controls. We've got trimmers here as well, which you just tap. Essentially, they're like the trimmers you have on a full-size transmitter that allow you to make up for drift. Now, I have test flown this once and I've set the trimmers appropriately, so I know that it will hold. It didn't take a lot of trimming out. Okay, so what we need to do now is press unlock, which will start the motors running. And then if we just press the throttle up it goes. And there we go. So it's going to hold its altitude. Let's just test that now. So I'm not altering any of the controls except for just to keep it into the middle of the room. And you can see it is holding its altitude really well. If I just give it a... Wow, that's really impressive for a cheap quadcopter. Again, if I do the down test, that's really, really impressive. So it's taking quite a bit of abuse from me here. And again, it always returns to the altitude that you set it to. That's really good. Now, obviously it has got the trimmer for setting the any drift that it might have, but in general, if I just let off the controls now, so that is holding its position really, really, really well. I mean, I'm not giving any control inputs here at all. Really impressive. So I'm just going to angle it towards me. I'm going to look ridiculous because I'm wearing a GoPro on my head. There we go. Take it up a little bit. Okay, and we'll take a photo. There we go. Take another photo. And take another one. The controls are very responsive as well. Just as there is minimal latency in the actual control in the video, the control inputs also have minimal latency. So literally this thing, as soon as I tap it, you can see it's moving. As soon as I press it, almost. Really, really good. Okay, so you're now watching the video that actually came out of the quadcopter. I mean, obviously I'm yet to review it, but if it's as good as it is on the display, then when you bear in mind that this thing is £30, I think it's pretty good. And the fact that it holds its altitude as well, that's really good. Now, I've not charged this battery. I'm not sure how much flight time we're going to get. So it'll be a little bit of a good test there as well. So to land it, you literally position it above where you want it to actually land. I'm going to land it just in front of the camera. And then press the down button in the bottom right hand corner of the app. Whilst it's landing, you can control it as well. And as soon as it touches down, it turns itself off automatically as well. So the descent was a bit rapid there. Let's just try that again actually. Okay, so position it above the table, press land. So when you first press land, it does seem to drop a bit fast, but then it slows its descent. I'm really impressed so far. We've only been through the basics of the functionality here, but that is pretty impressive actually. Okay, so a very quick test. So I've put it on my landing mat just to make it a little bit easier so the grass doesn't get stuck in the props. I've got the app on. I'm going to turn up the sensitivity here. We've got 3 settings. I'm going to change that to 60 just because there is a bit of a light breeze out here. I'm going to enable the altitude hold mode and press the off button, which gets the controls on screen ready to fly. So press the unlock button, which starts the prop spinning, and then give it some altitude. Whoa! And there we go, we're up. So I'm facing it into the wind. There is a light breeze here, but you can see it's very nicely balanced. Very, very stable here. If I just bring it down a bit, let's test the altitude hold features of this actually. I'm going to do that by... Okay, so I'm not touching the altitude at all here, the throttle. So if I take this and push it down, it recovers immediately back to the altitude that I set it to. Now, as I say, we are facing into a breeze here, so unfortunately it's wanting to constantly fly towards me, which is irritating. But again, if I push it up, it comes straight back down again. That's really good. So I'm just going to test the gravity control mode, but I would say the joystick mode is really responsive. For a Wi-Fi controlled drone, it's responding almost immediately to my controls. So press the tilt sensor button, and now we're on gravity mode, and that is much easier to control it. So I can now control it around just simply by tilting the phone. And hopefully you can see here just how responsive it is. If I turn up the sensitivity on the app, now it's really responsive. That's much better. That's really impressive, actually. I should do some circles around my camera here. Oh, nearly hit it. That's really good. For a Wi-Fi controlled drone, that's incredibly responsive. I'm going to turn that mode off now. So we're now back on joystick mode. And let's take it up a little bit in altitude. Actually, I'm going to start some video recording. It's a real shame about this wind, actually. I'm going to turn it back into tilt mode just because it is much easier, actually, to control. Getting a nice long flight time here as well. Just going to turn it around to face me a little bit more. The actual video quality on the live preview isn't very good, but then again, for it to be this responsive in control, I'm not overly surprised about that. Obviously there's no EIS, there's no stabilization on the video either. It does seem to hold its yaw pretty good, so it's got a kind of heading hold. And as I say, the altitude control is just exceptional for a cheap drone. And it's quick. I mean, I can really whiz this thing around. This is in tilt mode at the moment. Nice and easy to control. Right, let's bring it in for a landing. I'm going to stop recording as well. Okay, and in fact, let's just take another photo whilst we're up there. I'll turn it off tilt mode. Let's face it towards me. And at that point, I have to confess that I crashed it. So let's get on to the summary of the Elfie E50. We'll start with the negatives. Now, of course, the first big one is that it has no GPS or position hold. But remember that this thing costs a ridiculously low amount of money, and so we couldn't possibly expect it to include a GPS. But remember that because it has no GPS, it will not hold its position itself. Therefore, it's really ideally suited to indoor or very, very minimal wind flying conditions. The camera is very, very low quality. It's 576p and the frame rate is acceptable, but the actual lens and the quality of the camera sensor is not great, and therefore your photos and video will not be super HD quality. It's limited in range because of the fact that it uses Wi-Fi to connect to your smartphone. You're probably going to expect to get between 50 meters, possibly to 75 meters at a push, but it's unlikely. So this really is for close proximity flight. If you do lose Wi-Fi connection, it does simply drop out of the sky. So that's quite good in terms of safety. It's not going to fly away. It has no onboard SD storage, so the videos and photos that you capture are not stored on a card. Instead, they're stored on the smart device that you're using to control the drone. Now, the downside of that is that the video that you store might end up being a bit choppy in terms of the breakup signal, which is a bit of a shame, but again, this thing is cheap, so you can't really expect any more. So talking about price, we'll get onto the positives, and we have to start with that. This thing costs $40, which is about £35. It's unbelievable value considering how well balanced and how well it flies. It's lightweight and portable, so it does genuinely fit in your pocket or your bag. You wouldn't even know it's there. You're not going to be able to capture stunning shots, but at least you can take it anywhere with you. Despite being controlled via Wi-Fi, it's incredibly responsive. As I've said before, it's probably the most responsive quadcopter that I've ever flown via an app. That's really impressive. It's simple and easy to fly. If this is your first quadcopter or you're buying it for somebody who's a little bit younger, it's a great way to start. It's very simple and easy to get used to. The altitude hold works really well, and as you saw during the testing, I was able to push the drone down and upwards and it recovers back to its altitude that I set it to before. And finally, in terms of controlling the drone, the joystick mode is good, but tilt control is definitely the simplest and the most effective way to fly it, especially if you're flying it outside where there is a little bit of a breeze or a light wind. In summary, Eachine did a really good job with the E50. I still don't quite understand how they can manufacture an item like this and still make profit, but it's great for us because for less than $40, you've got a quadcopter which is portable, lightweight, and great fun. So that's the end of the review. I hope that was useful. I'm off to fly my little E50. If you have any questions, please comment below, and links to the product are in the video description. Thanks again for watching, and click subscribe.